We're going to go to
It's going live. I just have to do the screen share like normal.
Okay, gotcha. Off of this one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Like you would normally.
Okay.
Do you need the projector?
Yeah. Actually, we don't. It's gonna mention
Is it in that?
Should be right up there.
Is it on now?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Town of Cicero Planning Board meeting. And please join us in the pledge of allegiance.
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item is the approval of the minutes from the June 16th meeting. Does it get a chance to review any questions or comments? Make motion to approve as printed.
Second.
Mr. Rossino.
Yes.
Brady.
Yes.
Mr. Snyder.
Yes.
Mr. Bloss.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Members of the council. Next, we'll open the meeting to public comment. Anybody who wishes to speak to the board on any active application, please come forward and address the board. Just note that if there's a public hearing scheduled, public comments, so that public hearing is taking place. So if you're, anybody here that would like to address the board? If nobody's come up, we'll close the public report. And first item on the agenda is Cicero dumpster services for site plan at 6188 South Bay Road, proposed construction and dumpster business. Mr. George, is representing the applicant. Mr. George.
Good evening, Chairman. Good evening, other members of the planning board. Mr. Emmer Sturgill, the principal of the applicant, is here with me. You have before you the final site plan application for Cicero dumpster service. We believe that the applicant has complied with both of the conditions or rules of the planning board. The first of which was applying appropriate coverage from a visual point of view with fencing, brushes, and shrubs. If for some reason they're deemed insufficient, we're happy to add to them or increase them. The second one was regarding National Grid easement. The Cicero Planning Board has a long-standing policy, as I see it, of not enforcing private easement. And it's applicant's position that we've been consistent with in prior meetings is that that is a private easement. The Cicero Planning Board should take no position or involvement on that. And National Grid has a problem with however applicant viewed his own property. A National Grid being a private entity or quasi-private entity does have a remedy to applicant's Supreme Court. So based on that, we're asking the planning board today to actually vote and to approve the site plan application. But before the vote, I'm happy to answer any questions or concerns you may have. And Mr. Sturgill is here for that reason as well.
Thank you. You didn't see the county planning board?
I did, yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Where they recommended the modification of obtaining permission from National Grid. Again, just a recommendation that the planning board has the authority to disregard. In fact, it noted on the the resolution, the GML 239 report of final action, where it says, which you must submit after you vote, approved contrary to all the modifications. So there's obviously an expectation or possibility for the planning board disregarding it. I think the issue of a private easement is a different one. There have been other parties here before this board, probably Trey J on Mud Mill Road is the most recent one, where the chairman of the planning board, I believe it was not you, Mr. Chairman, but the prior chairman, clearly stated repeatedly that the planning board did not enforce a private easement. Whether other issues came up on that, I don't know offhand. Perhaps they did. But the idea of the applicant owns the property, Mr. Sturgill owns it as an individual, he's also principal of the operating business, can do what he wants with his property subject to governmental approval. And if National Grid has a problem with it, they can just sue the Supreme Court and the judge will figure it out. What I do think is a legitimate issue for the planning board is the location and based on 10 dumpsters. Now remember the original site plan had many more dumpsters. I think there were 25 or 30. To reduce to 10, the reason for that is the way the applicant's business operates is he makes money by loaning these dumpsters out to third-party locations. If he's got, X number of dumpsters on his property, he's not earning money. So the idea is it's a temporary place for them to be stored until a new customer comes in. And on average, and Mr. Sherwood can confirm this, he's got literally 4 to 6, usually on average here at one time. That's on the higher end. Would be a higher end of there.
Like 30 dumpsters.
In terms of not being on the property.
Or not being on the
Yeah,
property.
how many on the property?
There's like 10.
Yeah, and there are times when there are none, or 1 or 2. So it's kind of a temporary resting place. And if the foliage and the fencing's done where it's not as obvious from South Bay or from Thompson Road, so people don't see it. And we recognize that's a big deal. So we think we've solved that problem. And any other question?
The board, Mr. Cicero?
As the site sits right now, you're saying 10, but what would the site be capable of, in your opinion?
In terms of how many could actually be there, the property is very large. If he wanted to do that, he probably will. No, it's a large property from between Thompson Road and South Bay, and that's why we limit only 10. And the reason the limitation of 10 is because, and I don't know how the original site plan had so many, because they're just never there. I mean, if you drive by occasionally, I know some certain people, probably do. Sometimes there's 3, sometimes there's 4, but the idea is you turn them over quick. No business is conducted on the property. No customers come there. It's really just there temporarily empty, by the way, too. It's never stored there with any kind of debris or garbage. It's just an empty receptacle, and they're taken on and off by Mr. Sturgill. And the idea from his business point of view, if they're sitting there, he's losing money. So 10 is the maximum, but on a regular basis, it should be far less than that.
And how many do you own?
45.
Well, I appreciate your cooperation with screening from the voters.
As you know, Mr. Abbey, cooperate my middle name. I do my best. I'm the chief up there.
Some question on the, seems to be a lack of your opinion on the easement. Yes, the attorney weighed in on that.
Okay, I'm asked to weigh in on it. The situation we're talking about here is distinguishable from the situation we were talking about in Trey J. Trey J, we're talking about an easement that we really didn't know where it was. There was litigation to say where that easement was. And this planning board does have a longstanding tradition or of recognizing the easements on property when they can be placed and we know where they are. Also, they also have recognized that National Grid easements, if they cover a whole property, or the easement interferes with the proposed use of the property, such that you would not be able to use the property in an inconsistent manner with the easement, then we have asked in the past for landowners to give permission, to get permission from specifically National Grid or Niagara Mohawk, whatever it was. Your final analysis of this site, you have a county recommendation that says that you should get documented permission in place from National Grid prior to approving it, which you can accept, or you can choose to ignore. If you ignore it, you would need a supermajority. That would mean four votes of the planning board. okay? But this is distinguishable from the other easements, I believe, that we've discussed in the past.
If I may, the difficulty is that National Grid has already flat out told me under no circumstance will they ever give him approval. And so we're in a catch-22 situation of what comes first, the chicken or the egg. And I'm not saying this one is passing the buck, but you're saying with National Grid approval, and National Grid has flat out said to me, we're not gonna approve it, we don't care what you do. And there's like a $2,000 application fee now, I guess before it's $1,500. Why would he submit an application for something that he already told you is not going to occur? This got tied in with the property across the road. Suitor had a similar, identical business under the exact identical transmission line that was approved by this board, where National Grid, in writing, that I have my records, clearly stated they never gave permission for that business to operate under its easement, and yet this planning board did approve the same exact kind of business, literally on the same transmission line, like 100 feet or 100 yards or whatever that small distance is, right across the road. And, you know, there's an unfairness there. Mr. Smith was determined back then. I have my own personal opinion about why he, you know, opposed Mr. Sturgill and why he allowed it on Suitor. I also believe that there did purport to be, and I saw the minutes for the Suitor application. By the way, I don't think it was the name Suitor was the applicant. It was a Suitor property that we know, and the name was a different name, but I think Mr. Suitor was the principal. That my recollection of the minutes is that the architect, Tim Boyer, flat out said at a meeting, he got the approval. And there appeared to be something in the FOIL that I filed that kind of looked like it, but really wasn't. It wasn't an approval, but it looked like it was on National Grid. I personally believe it was falsified. I believe documents were submitted falsely in that case. But in any event, National Grid declined. They did flat out said to me, they never gave approval. Now, did they fudge the documents to make it look like they got approval and Bob Smith was just ready to go ahead and sign off on it? Maybe. You know, but the situation today, it's got nothing to do with the county planning board, really nothing to do with National Grid. This is the local Cicero planning board. The town attorney, I may disagree on some of his conclusions, but he said one thing was very clear. You have the right to vote yes. Okay, irrespective of anything he said about other cases. And I would ask you to approve it. The idea of, does anybody here really care about National Grid easements over transmission lines? They're not fixed, by the way, structure, not fixed structure. They can move. I mean, I've had personal experience with other businesses who had, like, an example, selling used cars that they operated and parked under National Grid easement. And the reason is, well, you gotta move them, they move. You can't put a permanent structure on them that can't be moved. These can all be moved, we're talking about 10. You know, we're not talking about 40 or 60, we're talking about 10. And the idea is, there's 3 there one day, 8 there the next day, they're in, they're out. There's an issue with National Grid, that's National Grid's problem. I think that from the planning board's point of view, and me as a town resident, and we're all town residents here, is that unsightly look of ugly garbage dumps. And that, I think this property was in Bridgeport, irrespective of National Grid or somewhere in a rural area, like surrounded by trees, and National Grid were going right overhead, then people wouldn't care about National Grid because no one can see it. I think the problem is partially where it's located and the fear, partially unwarranted fear, partially legitimate fear. The fear of how it's going to look as we come across it. Anybody who's lived here for many years, and I know many of us have lived here for generations. South Bay Road, I went there, South Bay convenience store when I was 15 years old. Went to Gillette Road Middle School. I mean, we know the way these 2 roads meet with the ballpark across the road. And the last thing I think people really want to see is ugly dumpsters. Although there are ugly dump trucks right behind Dunkin' Donuts that do debris and spoils there and kept the box up. You know, that was approved as well. So I did a FOIL on other properties just to get my lines in a row. But the idea is if it's aesthetically made more pleasing, like pretty little trees, and pretty little shrubs, and nice fencing. So when no one knows what's going on in there, there's 4 receptacles, who cares? You know, from your point of view. So I think you should approve it. And if there's a violation, you know, Mr. Procopio is good at nailing those violations and warning violations. If for some reason he's not complying with that map as is, there's a remedy. Town can say, hey, code enforcement say, you got the approval for this, you've deviated from this, you got 30 days to correct over in the monument court. You know, Mr. Procopio does all the time, so it's nothing new or different. There's an enforcement mechanism there as well. You know, the idea of National Grid flat out telling somebody, don't even bother applying because we're going to reject it. Why should the town planning board sanction that? Now, Mr. Sturgill is a hardworking individual, owns a couple businesses. Just give him a chance. You know, I don't think it's as big a deal as the fear. I think the fear is more than what the reality is going to be of how unsettling that is. There was a period of time, you may remember, when during COVID, Mr. Sturgill may have been taking certain liberties with the worldwide pandemic and having receptacles on the property. So we're all aware of that. Was it really that ugly? I mean, I can see there's 4 of them, and maybe there were some people who were bent on shape that didn't kind of wouldn't have followed the rules. But from a sightly point of view, was it really that bad? And now add to it huge fencing and shrubs and all that stuff, and it's gonna be minimized. I think it's gonna be beautiful and gorgeous. We asked for a vote tonight no matter what, but we asked you to approve it.
Everybody else? Mr. Senator.
I look at the county as being a little bit more authority than we have. I look at them as being, I think, overall, a little bit more in tune with what's going on in the whole county. It says the town must ensure the applicant has documented permission in place for National Grid prior to approval of this site plan application. I'm not looking at, I don't care about the ugly dumpsters, that's not a problem because there's a way of closing those. But I don't think I have the authority of telling Niagara Law, National Grid, well, I'm sorry, but even though you said no, I'm gonna say yes. I'm gonna say no to your situation. So I'll tell you right now up front, Mr. George, it is a no vote from me for the use of this area under the wire.
It's been a no vote from you from day one. Going back
No,
to
you're not,
application.
no, that's not
It's
true.
pretty clear. You've been hostile the entire time. Can I speak? Can I speak? Can I respond?
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. You know, the county says right here, recommend the following modifications. Okay, a second layer of bean counter government layers. Okay, you don't want to tell National Grid about their easement, but you're gonna tell Mr. Shergill what the property pays taxes on? Does that make any sense? Is that
Yeah, it makes a lot of
contradictory?
sense to me. We
The
cannot
property
deal-
owner has more important rights than the National Grid.
Okay.
And so the fact that a second level government bean counter, and remember, it says recommend following medication, not a requirement, not Zeus showing thunderbolts from heaven saying you must do this. It's a recommendation.
Mine says it must.
No, it says following, well, the town attorney already weighed on what the planning board could disregard if it required a supermajority. So you have maybe had a discussion with the town attorney about what that means and whether you're right or he's right. But the idea that National Grid's easement trumps the property owner's rights, that makes no sense. That's what you're telling us right now. You're saying National Grid, you're not gonna say no to National Grid. You're gonna say no to a local property owner who pays taxes. That's a problem.
Mr. George,
Yeah.
right now you're wasting your time, you're wasting all of our time. I told you I'm gonna vote no,
Fine.
so let's move on to the rest
I'm
and
just
see where
making
this
sure it's
goes.
on the record.
Oh, we're on the record.
The hostility in your face tells me from the get-go you were opposed to this. A failed town councilor candidate taking out his anger against a private.
All right, I think we're getting
Oh,
off.
now you're getting off.
No, I think I'm doing this purpose.
Mr. George, we're gonna move on to the
Thank you,
next.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Ross.
No further questions.
You know, for me, the county's recommendation is pretty important. The planning board attorney's comments are pretty important to me as well. There's a lot of things as far as dumpsters and the screening and that, I think that maybe could be worked out, maybe not. For the record, I've got pictures of dumpsters there that are full of debris. So the screening would be important, but for me, the hurdle is right now is that the fact that there's no permission from National Grid.
Well, if I could ask a question, Mr. Don Snyder, I remember having. If National Grid did give approval, Mr. Snyder, would that satisfy you that you honored the National Grid God and you vote yes? Because if that's true, I could sue National Grid on behalf of the company, get the court order and come back here. The question though is, will you give the time for that process to run? And I want to make sure we're clear, if you give approval for National Grid, if you give approval, are you going to vote yes? Or are you going to still?
You can't commit to a vote, but what we could do is have a finding. The board could adopt a finding in regard to the necessity of getting permission from National Grid as set forth in the county referral. And if they did give a positive finding on that, then you as an applicant would ask for time to get that permission. And you would set a time limit for them to have permission. that might be a good way to proceed, because if that's the only hurdle, and you say you can want to go out and try to get it, or don't want to go out and get it, you would at least know that this board has voted and made a finding that that they are in agreement with the county referral, and they're gonna require it. Right now, you don't know that because there hasn't been a vote on it. So you could have you as a chairman, you could have that finding.
So what would that do with the application? Put it in pending?
Well, then, once you made that finding, that it would be a necessary part of their any approval, because it's in the county approval. If you made that finding, it would at least let the applicant know that you're not gonna get a super majority because you've already made that finding. And then the applicant could do one of two things. The applicant could say, I want to vote anyways, and then do whatever they're gonna do. Or the applicant would say, I would like some time to get the permission, written permission of Niagara Mohawk in accordance with that finding. And then you could say, we'll give you 2 months or whatever it is. But that would at least step the applicant through it.
Having heard the town attorney, we would agree with what you recommended and request the additional time for the mechanism of finding that you referred to. So however you want to handle, that aspect of it, and maybe reschedule it 2 months later, or we will be happy to comply with what you.
So then, if you have been successful in getting the easement permission, you would then continue on.
Then you would continue on with the site plan application, because what your finding would be, and I'll propose the finding right now, you're gonna have a proposed finding of the town of Cicero Planning Board that the applicant must provide documented permission from National Grid prior to approval of the site plan in accordance with the county referral. And that would be in the form of one of your motion.
There would be a time frame on that?
Then you would set a time frame for them to provide it. So you've agreed to, you've requested 2 months, right?
Whatever the plan, yes, we have no problem with 2 months or 3 months for the planning board requires, but we do concur with the town attorney.
You go with 2 months?
Yes.
So in addition to that finding, you would agree, if you do, with the applicant's request for 2 months to provide written permission from National Grid.
Yeah, in light of all the time that's gone and application, I don't think 2 months is enough time, to be honest with you, if you're gonna go to the Supreme Court.
No, we're gonna actually apply with National Grid and go through their process.
And then if National Grid denies them,
Chuck, any additional?
Appreciate the landowner. And doing that to it.
The property that's encumbered. Next one. Just not any additional before you go. No, sounds good.
Sounds good to me.
Rosie? Mark, anything? We're not doing site plan.
Okay, non-regard to that, then. Nope.
You haven't probably.
No, I have, I just have a couple questions, but we can address that when site plan comes along or later after your resolution, that's fine.
Mr. Snyder, did I hear you recommend that in the form of a motion? Yes, sir. For the second? Second. By Mr. Ross, Mr. Cicero.
Yes.
Bradley. Yes. Mr. Snyder. Yes. Mr. Ross.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Okay, we're stuck with that. Mark, you want to go over something?
Just a couple questions. I guess I heard during the discussion here of talk of a fence. Is that on the plan?
That plan right there has all the things there in terms of foliage. Fencing, I guess is the general term, a vague term I'll use to describe some kind of visual barrier. But a fence can be done. We had the architect just put something up there based on his experience that most towns require when they're looking for some kind of minimizing the view. But if a fence is required, and the planning board says, well, we like these roads, we want something more, we will comply with the planning board's requirement for any kind of visual.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that because again, I was hearing that word and I feel there's a definition of it, but which was not shown on this plan, so that's fine. Just the other thing I would recommend, and again, it's getting a little detailed or whatever, but again, I'd suggest maybe taking these trees here and kind of angling them across like this, and maybe the same type of thing over here to, again, cut down on the view as you're traveling along Thompson and South Bay. Again, minor issue, but again, I just think it will improve the project and the screening that's being provided by whatever ends up being provided there. That's it. Thank you.
Just so we're clear on the foliage, if you guys want pink petunias there, we will do it. If you decide I want a 4-foot tree pink, perfect, you name it. Regarding the screening, the visual screening, Mr. Emmerich will put up what you want. We got out there from Little Caesar doing that little placard sign thing if you want. So you guys tell us what we want, and he will comply with that. Though our whole big issue was national grid.
From my perspective, I'm really not ready to get into that until we get past the further national line. I don't know if you go, I'm throwing it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have a great evening.
Thank you very much.
Anyway, bye.
Good night.
Did they put a time frame on it?
2 months, I think is what he agreed to. 2 months.
Next item on the agenda is for.
That's 2 months. Two.
2 months. 048, Thompson Road is proposed home occupation. This one, we're just waiting for the county's review. We got that. Nothing they mentioned is the septic issue. And septic.
Okay.
There was no modification. No modification. They need approval from county health or whatever, right? If necessary, yes. And any permits would cover that. We want to, do we approve without her being here?
Yeah, you can, I don't see a reason either. Why to delay it further? I mean, she was here the last time.
Yeah, I agree.
With that favor.
all the questions last time.
I think the stipulation, if you can just correct me if I'm wrong, is the applicant will be limited in the scope of the activities set forth in the application, no signage, conducted by appointment only. And did we say one customer at a time allowed on the the premises?
Yeah, she said there would be only one.
Those are the three I got. I can give you the motion. If you
And you take Mr. Snyder.
What's that?
And you take Mr. Snyder's stuff.
No, I remember when she said she does father and son, so when we say customer, we don't mean necessarily only one, that the son's got to stay in the car till the father gets, that's not making it any more possible for her to do her job.
All right, so you're going to move for the adoption of a resolution approving the application known as Natalie McGowan, 8048 Thompson Road, proposed home occupation. This approval is strictly conditioned on the following: one, the occupation will be limited to in scope to the activities as set forth in the application. There will be no signage or display to the general public. Two, the business will be conducted by appointment only, and the premises will not be open to the general public to visit without an appointment. Three, no more than one customer at a time will be allowed on premises.
So the father and son can't go?
No.
Change that somehow, that, father and son can appear at her shop.
One family.
You want to put two? I mean, you could put two because I think two might be. If she's got customers back to back, you'll have two at the same time.
She said she likes to leave a space for her.
I think she mentioned it now.
You may want to do the just in case.
Yeah, I mean. 'cause
Otherwise, she's violating her site plan.
There's two people in there, they'll have to write her up.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen. But you want to go to two?
Yes, yeah, I would.
All right, so we're gonna just amend the exact motion that we just went through, but it's gonna be no more than two customers at a time allowed. And I need somebody to actually so move that.
You don't need a seeker, right?
No.
So move.
We have a second? Second. Mr. Cicero. Yes. Brad.
Yes.
Mr. Snyder.
Yes.
Ross.
Yes.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is for Pasquale Palma. This is for the property at 7841 Route 298, General Commercial to R15 Zone, recommendation to the town board.
New to this, have no idea what I'm doing.
Start with a name.
I'm Pascal Palmer, and I am applying for the zone change.
Just kind of give a little background on your site.
I've had a life-changing event, and I need to stay, I want to stay in the Bridgeport area. My kids are nearby. Sold my primary home on Fox Road. Been there for 16 years, owned the property for 22 years with the old Johnson camp. Tore it down and built a residence. Now that I have to find different housing, I've been looking at that property for 22 years because I'm a parishioner at St. Francis Church. Bought it initially of an investment when I owned the property on Fox Road. Now I'm thinking of a residence. Notice it's been empty for 3 years, I think. For the zone change, make it my residence.
Questions, Mr. Cicero? No. I'm all set. Jeremy?
All set.
Mr. Snyder?
All set.
Ross?
All set.
Mr. Marzio? All set? I have no questions either. So we just need a recommendation.
Right, you're gonna move for the adoption of resolution recommending the zone change application known as Pasquale de Palma, 7841 Route 298, general commercial to R15.
They want us to do secret.
Yes.
I don't recommendation or.
Seems like they should be doing it, if they want to make the decision.
Yeah, but the resolution for setting a public hearing that was part of it.
Now, are we just recommending?
Well. Yeah, you're running a tough situation there, so just give me 1 second so I can look at there.
Sorry.
This is why we have an attorney.
Something I can help with?
No,
One of the two bodies needs.
What is that? What is it? Can I ask?
State Environmental Quality Review Act.
Oh, got it.
So
There was some owl like they found it.
This one would be pretty simple.
trying to find the actual application so I can look at the. You can find the short form of this.
Because I said there was a.
let me see if I can find it for you. This is Pasquale.
I don't know how that would.
So if it's short form.
I understand.
Unfortunately, the application's not in our file
It's all
here.
right, I got it.
Do a short form.
Okay. Before we do this, we'll do our standard seeker motion.
Second. Yes. Yes. Ross?
Yes.
I vote yes.
Now we're gonna do the recommendation.
The motion is already been made. You vote on it, Mr. Garcia? Yes. Ready?
Yes.
Mr. Snyder?
Yes.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So we've given you a positive recommendation. Good luck.
Good. Can I ask what happens next? You might.
You're gonna have to go in front of the town board, they're gonna make a fact, the actual zone change was done by the town board, all we did is recommend to them.
Next year, going next year.
Done by
So
the
the
recommendation.
notification of when that is and everything else.
Somebody
Yes.
It was not from the end of July.
Public hearing.
The next meeting is the following.
I'm very grateful. Thank you very much. Thank everybody.
It'll be to the end of July.
Chairman,
Yeah.
who made that motion? I didn't. We said it's in the form of a motion.
I think it was John Snyder
Don.
made it and
Okay.
They were fighting for it.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. And the board members, pull the microphones a little closer. It's hard to, other than this Snyder view, it's very difficult to hear.
They just point it out.
Who can't you hear, Judy?
Joe, Chuck, you three on the end. There's never a time when I don't hear you.
It's even worse when you're watching from home.
Yeah, well, that's why I was saying, it's hard to hear.
Next item on the agenda is for Augusta, Syracuse. It's probably 5942, State Route 31, a proposed relocation and reconstruction of a garbage shack. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Van Heis. I'm with Kimley Horn and Associates on behalf of the applicant Odessa. I'm here this evening with Dave Taylor with Odessa if you have any specific operational questions, but I can introduce the project to you quickly.
Please.
We are asking for permission to make some minor modifications to the way the entrance to the secure portion of the site acts. Currently, security gates are located almost immediately adjacent at the bottom there to the existing concrete building. You can see there's that right there. That's where the existing building is. And we've discovered that that's actually over top of, or within unendowed water as well as an easement, so it needs to be moved. So that's what this project is definitely good. What we discovered in studying better places to put that entrance outside of the easement is that we will be able to actually improve the way that the site functions inside the fence line and outside. It's demonstrated here in this exhibit, which depicts a 90-foot car carrier. Now this would not happen. It doesn't actually function this way, but you can see how much space by moving the entrance to the more, well, page north location, which is the end of the existing fence line. We have a lot more stacking on site, so we don't back up traffic out into the building. It also improves the way that the site functions inside because that actually is the far end of the corner of the secure portion of the site, and the vehicles cycle around like a clock. So it gives us better functionality.
You're moving from east, right?
East. That's an existing fence corner there. And we'll move as close to that corner as we can so that the gates can still function as stocking gates. Met with Onondaga, we have actually received comments from them, which were very minimal. Basically notes that they asked to be added to the plans. We're in the process of doing that now. And they just asked to be present when we do the demolition of the existing facility and the construction of the new facility, as well as when we run conduit, because we have 2 conduits that need to run across certain. They indicated that they will support our occupation of that easement. A few things that will be allowed to be in there, parking being one of them. Fence posts, there are 2 utility poles that they will also add to that agreement. As we're willing to get the rest of the power. That's it.
Proceed on the question. How far are you moving?
Well, it's about 50 feet from the existing corner. So I don't know how.
This is the existing.
Yeah, but the corner is up there, yeah, so from that corner point, if you just move your cursor up a little bit there. And that corner down is about 50.
Like 100 feet or more, moving it, doing this,
I'm sorry?
100 or more feet probably.
Oh, well, yes, that's correct. No, there's no other changes to the fence line. It stays where it is. We're just changing how we move.
Gary?
No, set, but it looks like they pretty much covered all the bases. Need to be done to the driveway.
I'm good. Ross?
I think that that's gonna help with the traffic coming off of 31. That area is really, a lot of traffic, and that's a great idea. I realize the county says because of the water rate. Yeah, I think it will work.
Chris said that the tent was being relocated. Is that from before or is that being moved?
It's a temporary structure, and actually I don't even think that's where it's gonna go. We're just moving it so that it's outside, so we could pack, right now, it would be in where our entrance line is, so we would just move it. It's not moving very much. It's just,
What's the shaded area here?
that's where it is now, and we're gonna move it to the other direction.
You got it? I'll be.
comments for the change in circulation with vehicles and car carriers, et cetera, now entering the site and accessing.
You know, anything to start? Mark?
Is this resulting in any changes to the striping on the site?
There's eradication of some of the striping outside the fence line. Actually, I think if you go back,
Yeah, I'd have to bring up a different sheet. So there is I think there is a demolition plan or something maybe. Okay, all right. All right, I really don't have any comments right now. I think I'll just work with the applicant with whatever comments that I generate and hopefully get them resolved by the next meeting. We do have a county recommendation back on this. You said, or-
No, we just
Oh, you just sent it? Okay. All right, so that gives us some time. I'll get comments out to the applicant, and work through a few things here, and we should be good to go.
thank you very much.
Next item on the agenda is for Yvonne Holligan, this is probably 6304 Hardwick Lane, this is another proposed home occupation.
Hang on here.
I'm sorry, I said.
That's what they want to do.
Henderson Development. This is property 793-8003 Brooklyn Road, proposed parking and cross access.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board, Matthew Oates with Anderson Development, 570 Delaware Avenue, Buffalo. We are proposing to add 10 additional parking spaces to our retail strip plaza, and then also add a cross connection to the Walgreens parcel on the south side, which will then allow access to the side road, which then accesses the signal on US Route 11, which just in busier times allows for safer movement for vehicles to get onto US Route 11. We do also have a cross connection already in place with the property in the north, so that will allow the property in the north as well access all the way down to the signal. Our tenants, and as you've been listing the building, have always expressed some concerns about the parking. There's a lot of the parking in the back as well, so trying to get some just overall more parking for the site, more parking up front, and then along the top side where there's a fair space as well. Overall, we think it'll help to just squeeze out the rest of the building and make the cross access as well. It's a really good use. I always try to describe to that professional. Access.
I'm a big fan of cross connections.
Yeah, so
Thank you for doing that up.
Looks good. Thank you.
Mr. Adams? Mr. Snyder?
Looks good. I've been in the situation where when edible arrangements was in that plaza. Yes. And I had to drive out, and wanted to turn, actually I wanted to turn right, and I took where I want to do it. This will really help eliminate all that.
yes, so we're looking forward to it.
Mr. Ross?
No further questions.
Mr. Rosio?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think there's some plans for some reconfiguration of existing tenant spaces, maybe where.
Yes.
Okay. We start with the building, but those occupancies should require additional parking, whatever they might be.
Correct.
Other questions, is the back parking area striped? I'm not back up, but I don't recall that other space being left out there.
Yes, yeah, that's the full row. That is right. That was part of the original approval. Yep, it's mostly parked there. So we're adding 3 spaces on the south side of the back row, 2 spaces on the south side of the front row, and 5 spaces on the north side.
Nothing.
These spaces here aren't going to meet our requirements. We need a 22-foot aisle fit in here. And, you know, I guess, so that's not going to work. So that needs to be cut. I mean, is this pavement over here?
Yep, so that's all, yep, that is pavement there. So even with the angle parking stalls.
Well, you need this. I mean, this would need more to me if it was angled this way, quite honestly, because you get out at 22 feet, you're doing more than a 90-degree turn to get out of these. I mean,
Well, that's one way, so you have to, you can only, it's only one.
This
way.
is
So-
paved through here.
Yep, that's all paved there. there that's existing in there.
I-
So the line that runs through the middle, so from the bullnose where the number 2 is, there's the light gray line that heads over to where the dash line is, where the other 2 is.
Okay,
That's the existing curb line, so that's the drive lane that goes across, but the way the site was designed and approved, that's a one-way circulation all the way around the building, so that the cars can pull in, back out,
So-
and then continue around. the building.
that's currently paved there? Is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
That's all the existing.
Okay. I can look into that. We might need to adjust the angle on these and we can see what's appropriate. You are probably gonna wanna have some signage here to prevent people from going out in this direction if you're expecting this to be one-way traffic. So we need to look at that if that's not detailed.
Mark, and it's something that, well, in terms of what is required, we will need these 20 feet of fire apparatus access. Because we have to get around
I can talk to you about that, Steve, to see how to convey that to them. Over here, we've got pavement right up to the property line, not a good idea, snow removal, a little bit of green space in between some buildings, et cetera. So I'd ask that we look at potentially redoing this, so we're not paving it right up to the property line here. I guess this is the new access to, that's the new access point here to the Kenny's. Is that what's over here?
Walgreens.
Walgreens, I'm sorry, yeah. Yeah, so I assume you have an agreement in place with them? Was that provided with the submittals? Okay. Okay, so just a couple quick thoughts right there, I guess. Again, we'll do a review. I'll get with Steve and we can look and see if there's anything else that we can come up with. Yep, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Now you can, sorry about and this is the property 6304 land use proposed home occupation.
I'm John Callahan. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist.
Can you speak a little closer to the mics? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Yvonne Callahan, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'd like to bring my office into my home. I see 3 to 5 clients a day, and some of the clients are telehealth, so there's nobody going to be in my home at that time. Available space in my parking lot for my driveway.
Is there a zero?
Well, obviously, you're one customer at a time.
Absolutely.
Enough parking. Okay. Okay.
Okay. Schneider? Okay, then. Mr. Boss?
No further questions.
So, when families, you ever get family members coming together?
I haven't in a while because of COVID. I did all my mental health counseling online through Zoom because of COVID. So at this point, I haven't had anything, but I do work.
Yours?
No,
Mr. Cobia?
no, I have nothing. I'll just put on the board. This didn't require to go to county planning board.
Did not?
Location did not, so. Also.
Yeah, I mean, the one inconsistency was, you were asked one person at a time, and then you said you do counsel families. That would kind of indicate. I'm sorry. When you say you counsel families, one at a time, so 4 people in a family, or are you okay with one at a time? Is where I'm trying to get at.
Okay, with families, it's generally the parent and the child, or it could be 2 parents and a child. So that's what I class as.
So you could have 3.
I could have up to 3 in my office at one time. They're all the same.
What could that mean as far as people travel?
One people. And there, as I say, there's space in between as well as, a number of these families are also here. So,
The family council, you got a husband and wife that have issues, I think. You ready to get it?
well, they came together, you know, and I've been able to work with couples for many years. And
The concern here is the traffic and parking in the driveway, and you've got, you have,
two vehicles. Yes, they can certainly one driver, so I'm not sure I understand your question.
well, that's the concern, we don't want people parking in the street.
Oh, right, oh, no, there would never be anybody else in the street, I park my car in the garage, there would be ample in my driveway.
How many vehicles do you have in the household?
One.
Nothing here.
So I was having a little hard time following. So what we're talking about is no more than 3 people with a maximum of 1 vehicle.
Correct.
Traveling in 1 vehicle.
Well, but again, it could be a family with 2 or 3 kids, so there could be maybe 5 people that are coming through at one time.
Right, but it's not talking about
Right,
that
it's still
large.
only one vehicle.
Right, and there's room for 4 vehicles. One at a time.
So you want client or family? Okay. You're in Cicero now?
Yes. I'm the Cicero professional.
Okay, well, Maybe we put a motion.
Yes. I'm going to move the adoption of resolution approving the application known as Yvonne M. Callahan, 6304 Hardwood Lane, proposed home occupation. This approval is strictly conditioned on the following. 1, the occupation will be limited in scope to the activity as set forth in the application. There will be no signage or display to the general public. 2, business will be conducted by appointment only and the premises will not be open to the general public to visit without appointment. 3, there will be no more than 1 client or family unit traveling with 1 vehicle at any time allowed at the premises.
Like to make that as a formal motion? Move on, Mr. Cicero, we have a second? Second. Mr. Cicero? Yes. Mr. Eddie? Yes. Mr. Snyder? Yes. Mr. Moss? No. I vote yes. Come on. Next item on the agenda is Thomas Farley. This is a minor subdivision. Preliminary final plan, property on Full Street, 2 lots.
Good evening, Tim Boyer, I am Mr. Romans. I appreciate, first of all, I appreciate you adding this to the docket. We were here 2 meetings ago. This is a 2-lot subdivision on Full Street. The last item that the board wanted to see on the plan was the proposed driveway easement. I did add the proposed driveway easement here. On the map, it did show roughly where they're thinking about possibly putting the 2 houses that we talked about. And again, this is a private driveway easement. This would be something between the 2 property owners. It's nothing that the public would be driving on or anything like that. And I apologize, I did not write up a legal description for this just yet. I didn't realize Neil would have to see it, but Neil would like to see it, so I'm gonna write up a legal description for the private driveway. That's my mistake.
I don't think I need a legal description so much as you could just simply refer any underlying easement that you're gonna file. You could simply refer to the map. You could
Yes.
the map to it.
That's what when I say legal description, that's all we're gonna say. I'm gonna say the easement as per this map. It's not gonna be an easement down, it's just gonna
As shown on
reference
that.
as shown on this map.
That's just possible.
Yes, possible location.
Possible location? No, it's the location.
Right, so if you look at it, so similar to when we do utility easements, wherever the driveway goes in, the easement will straddle wherever the proposed driveway goes in.
There's no way to do this, cutting across the wetland and creating
So
equal amount of wetland, I mean.
as I discussed at the previous meeting, they're not exactly sure where these houses are going because they haven't gotten that far into the planning process. And again, they haven't gotten to the part where exactly they're going to bring this driveway around. They're working with Delta engineers, they're gonna get the wetlands delineated and located, and that's gonna kind of dictate where the driveway ends up being. But again, that's the whole reason why previously I didn't show the proposed driveway at all, because they're not exactly sure where it's gonna go. Once the construction goes, that's where the driveway will end up.
So what you're being asked to do is to approve two new lots, but you really should know where the access is going to be for the lots. Now, normally, if they just had a normal 2 lots, we would just approve the 2 lots and then they would get their cuts or whatever they're gonna do for access after the fact, and we would know about it. But in this case, we do know about it. And the proposal is to have access to the lots go right where you're seeing for ingress and egress right there. And then we got kind of a mess getting back to the back of that lot with a wetland.
Correct.
Mark, there's no way we can have that driveway be on the frickin' property line and do something with the wetlands, I mean.
Not we or me. Yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, no, but yeah, I mean, can we? I suppose, but that's what they have to bring forward, is that proposal. I mean, yeah, I mean, so this is a possible location of a future driveway. Yeah, I don't know, Neil, I mean, that's, how does that work?
It really doesn't work for you, to the extent that. Okay, so you can show access if you go down, run along that. Yeah. Okay, so if you go down here, okay, and if you had adequate access to both parcels, I suppose, then everything that happens after that, it's private between 2 landowners. Once you start getting into here, I don't even know what you're gonna do with that, you know. With the wetland where it is, it looks like you're trying to go around it.
Yeah.
But if you have adequate access, and I don't know how wide this is or for both parcels,
Yeah, it's 40.
Total of 40 feet.
Yeah,
is that okay?
yeah, it's plenty. I mean,
And I think you're okay if you can get in and out.
so but they have someone working now to develop a plan for them?
They have contacted Delta engineers I recommended that they get the wetlands delineated before they do any house placement, and we don't want to stake a house out, we don't want to start any construction with, proposed wetlands, and I've explained that to them, and I said before I would stake a house out for them, we want to make sure we have wetlands delineated so that we don't get too close to any wetlands. Now, this is a 2-lot subdivision with ample access to Bull Street. Now, in theory, if they were to put the houses in the front, we wouldn't be talking about this, and if they were going to do just separate driveways, we would be talking about this, but they would like to put it back there. And again, this is all something that's private, that's gonna be a utility access easement between the 2 property owners. And I guess my thought is that's something that is done separately, typically. We do these type of easements and access easements fairly often as far as private easements between 2 property owners. And that's where I was going with this, that this easement and all the access easement could be handled quote unquote after the subdivision is actually approved. If the easement's not there, the subdivision is still viable, it's still per code and it still works. It's just these 2 people want to put the houses in the back. It just happens that they want to do.
Mark, do they need to have, when they do the wetlands, do they need to have a 100-foot buffer or something?
Not if they're core wetlands, which are it's DEC wetlands have the 100-foot buffer. These, at least on that part, aren't. Tim, are there any in the back? Or?
There's some, they're all.
Core. Yeah, it's all core. Way back there, you've got the. Yeah.
I mean, if we have a way of getting into the site,
What if
we do, we put a curve, then really not up to us.
What if they were to prove it without that easement shown, that the building permits can't be issued until they get that easement? file.
That
I don't know if Steve, that puts too much pressure on you. Did you, I guess I'm saying, if we approve this with the understanding that there's going to be somewhere this easement, this shared driveway and utility easement, but that, again, what I would do if we don't know where it's gonna go and you're gonna file this plan, the map, I don't think you can file it like that, right? I mean, so without it actually being that, they would dedicate the easement more or less. I mean, so I guess what I'm saying is, can the actual location of that easement be pushed off until such time as you issue a building permit? And so as a condition of the building permit, they need to show that they have the appropriate easement in place for the shared driveway and the utility access.
I would be fine with that. One of the issues for him, number of driveways will access, were already took care of that by shared access. Also condition that I would superintend the rule of the location of the driveway. I'm fine with that. You know, your approval.
That makes sense to me as opposed to a possible location of.
Yeah, I don't know what you think about it. I'm just throwing the idea
I
out
don't
just to
think, I
try
don't
and
think it's, I
resolve
don't think
this.
it's a bad idea, because it would give you a chance to look at it and, well, first of all, you're not ready.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
It would give you a chance to get a map filed, which is step one.
Right.
And so it wouldn't be a condition of filing the map, it'd be a condition of getting your building permit. And you're agreeing to that and you're suggesting.
Yes. Question, thoughts? Motion.
Yeah.
1 second to get that one straightened out. And then you might want to call the next one.
Start typing.
And then,
There you go.
We don't need to secure on this.
I'm the next one, so.
do the next one.
Asterino?
All right.
All right. Did you have 3 different plans? Did you want to look at all your 3 options or?
I have 3 somewhat similar, somewhat different ones. I'm gonna hand something out to everybody.
Handouts.
Yeah, I like it.
I know you do.
Handout type of
Okay, so now we're at the, Michael Astrino, this is copy statement 31, supposed to be your detail.
Good evening, employer, I use your own. Where have we seen you? Where have we seen you?
I don't know if anybody was here for the, I know Mr. Yazdi was here for the town board meeting. We were in front of the town board, recently. This is kind of the initial step to a, what we would have a PUD process. I forgot my notes. Hold on just a second. Just giving Neil more time. So if you're familiar with this property, I believe Mr. Escher has been somewhat around with this property many times. I think you know that he's in, for a long time, he was trying to get a little bit of access to the region. And he did eventually get access to, for an emergency exit through the region. But this property right now is zoned general commercial. It was originally our apartment back initially. The whole point of this property and what he wanted to do was to do apartments at this property. During the 2016 and 2017 rezoning that the town did, they rezoned this property to general commercial. Mr. Astorino didn't have a problem with that because at the time, apartments were allowed in general commercial. And just recently, as you all know, that apartments got taken out of general commercial. So that kind of dictated us needing to go for some type of zone change. We thought, because he wants to do some type of mixed use project here, that PUD would be a good fit for this property. We could go our apartments, and we did get the same quote unquote density, we kind of do the same type of thing, but we're hoping to do a PUD specifically for a couple of reasons. We're looking to do like a private roadway in here, we don't want to do public. Private utilities, we're looking to do some type of what you would call building envelopes or smaller building pads that people would privately own. These This would not be a rental community. Each individual unit that you see here would be privately owned by people and they would own their own small piece of property. But what would happen is this would all be like under an HOA type of thing. So you have Route 31's here, the main access is here. We would try to do some type of apartment project over in this area. And the rest of it would be some type of patio home. He wants to, and what the PUD would also give us is the flexibility to possibly do also single family units, not necessarily a patio home. So instead of maybe this one being a patio, we change it to a single family unit. To allow someone if they want to just do a single family residence instead of a duplex type residence. This plan here kind of shows a couple of single family units being put in there. I want to stress that PUD does not allow us any more units. The units that we show here is what would be allowed if we went to our apartment. I think that roughly there's 165 general units on this property that's included with the apartments. One of the first 2 pages on the handout that I gave you is some email correspondence with State DOT. In 2019, we went in front of State DOT. I sat down with State DOT with the applicant. We got permission for 250 units of apartments for this property with almost a full access out to Route 31. Due to COVID, it kind of stopped the project. What I also had there is I want to make sure that that everything that's going on, that their approval, their approval from 2019 was still stood. So I re-emailed them and went back through everything and they said no. We still approved the 250 units. So we're still good with State DOT and the access and the traffic, that we did do a traffic study for this project. State DOT has it, town has it. So again, we're approved for 250 units, but this is only showing roughly 120 units, I'm sorry, 120 units on this plan. We are thinking because if you look at some of the layouts that give some residential properties over here and some residential use stuff in here, that keeping the residential single family duplexes on this side of the project would be a nice buffer between the existing residents over here. And we are pushing the apartments over here because you have the Legion and the post office, thank you, the post office over here. And you have the existing upper apartments over back in here. Right now, again, this is just a review of the preliminary development plan with the town. We're hoping to get some comments, see what the overall view is for this project, and hopefully move this forward officially.
Thank you, Tim. Mr. Cicero? Right at the moment. Ready?
Any plans for sidewalks?
We haven't gotten to that point. There could be an connecting sidewalk throughout the project, but this is more of a rough general plan right now. Once we go through PUD, and again, this will be my first PUD plan, so I believe that kind of stuff would be, those kind of details would be planned out while we go through the process in the engineering.
You mentioned the units being privately owned.
Yes.
They're just the footprint of the building, or?
So I don't know if you're familiar with like the landings at Maple Bay. There's a little small little development over there off of Lakeshore Road. So it's like a rectangular shaped parcel that the building fits on. So you would own a rectangular shaped parcel. Those ones I think are like 50 by 70 or something like that. But then you design the houses to fit within that parcel that's on it. Yes, it's like a little postage stamp little parcel. Yep.
About the trash removal
We're not into that, but it'll be handled by the HOA, and we're gonna have to get that all ironed out while we go through. Because that was one of the comments from the town board, they want to make sure we took care of all the utilities and everything within the HOA.
I gotta re-up on what PUD doesn't do. Just the sound of the PUD gives me chills. That we're trying to do something that we wouldn't do under the normal code, so I got to educate myself again on that. I'm also worried about long-term. We do these private situations, and then the planning board changes, the town board changes, and lo and behold, the town accepts, a non-standard road. That was built as a private road, but 30 years down the road, the people sitting up here or sitting on the council, they don't remember any of that. That's old history, you know. They don't know that the plows don't go in there and plow snow. Well, I guess I'd feel concerned about that whole thing.
So the basic general utility and maintenance and how that's structured for the future.
I mean, if you tell me right now that we're gonna build all the roads to state to town standard, that would eliminate that problem for me, ever happening, because if we end up accepting it, we know we're accepting a road that is at our current standard for road building.
Okay, I know, so part of our plan was for the interiors portion, we were thinking we wouldn't have the typical town standard. What we were talked to the board about was having this section, this main drive, be a public portion of the property. The reason for that is, our thought was that this is public, and the properties along Route 31, as they develop, could potentially give each other, or you could create some type of easement as these get developed to access this public drive and use it, eliminating the necessity for driveways up on 31.
You're saying if those residents sell and become commercial?
Yes, I mean, they're already in commercial, everything around us is in commercial.
The public town highway maintain.
Yeah, they would just maintain this portion. Again, that was just something we can discuss. It was just an idea that was brought up, and I think it was brought up a while ago.
Right now, if I was a plow driver, that sucks. Then I gotta plow the road, and then where do I put the snow? I can't drive on the private roads, with our equipment. We gotta think about the town highway people when we do these things. Just the same thing as we talked later, maybe about cul-de-sacs. I have the same problem with that.
Correct.
No further questions.
And that access road, how long is it? I don't, you cannot understand that,
I don't have it here on these plans. I think it's around 400 feet. 400 feet. I can double check.
long run for one entrance, and you said there was an emergency.
Yep, so back, I think it's right here. So this is the American Legion. We got permission from American Legion to have just an emergency egress through their property to Legion Drive, it's right here.
Parking spot right there. The emergency, the fire truck engine here.
I believe, yes, we have some plan that show that access to there.
What would dictate whether or not a single family road?
Kind of the market, so with
the
this
fluid,
fluid, I think we'd have to dictate, how many single families are allowed, how many units are allowed. But with the subdivision process, we kind of do this, again, it's kind of going to be a fluid motion situation, but we do this in sections as far as the overall subdivision. We wouldn't do one big subdivision final plan type of thing. We would do a few units at a time and file them individually. So you have, and I talked kind of Steve today about this. We're gonna have multiple applications and multiple things going on. Part of it might be a preliminary plan, part of it's going to be a final plan, site plan, that type of thing. So yes, it'll be somewhat fluid, but once you file and you get an approved final plan, then it could change.
What about construction of utilities and that kind of thing? If you got sewer lines run, water lines run, gas lines, and then you end up with what you call gonna be a couple townhouses connected, and so there's a single family.
Well,
How does that happen?
so it's similar to like a typical subdivision, preliminary plan. You only do the utilities up to for that section of the the subdivision. You don't extend the utilities out of that section into the subdivision.
Once the infrastructure is put in, then it's set in stone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Snyder when he talked about a PUD and how sometimes it seems like it's just a skirt, regulations for our end, and good to know that we're staying within those guidelines for density. So really, the only reason you go PUD is to be able to do some of the single family, is that it?
It allows for the HOA and it allows for the smaller, I'm supposed to say lots and that type of thing, and allows for the private roadways. But the PUD also allows us for the town to also have more say in, architectural designs and that kind of thing. So I think that's kind of the benefit for the town. You guys get to kind of somewhat dictate what it's going to look like overall with the architectural draft. And with us, we want to quote unquote get the benefit of not having a full public infrastructure.
Concerns about traffic, but you guys talk about that.
Well, the fluid nature of it kind of bothers me. I mean, you really shouldn't, yeah, I mean, you really should have a good grasp of what you're being asked to opine on at this point. I mean, at this point, it's preliminary, but at some point, you're really gonna have to kind of nail it down somewhat before you're gonna get to vote, which I'm sure you're gonna do.
So again, this is just getting preliminary thoughts before we put a whole bunch of time, money, and effort into actually planning and that type of thing. So similar to what we do with so inverted gardens, I don't know if you're familiar with inverted gardens over in Clay, that's a PUD that we did. The similarity, we can change the lots from duplexes to single family houses. But every time we have to do that, we have to go back in front of the boards, town board and planning board, to get that approval to change those lots from the original approved concept plan. So eventually there'll be a approved concept plan that shows how many duplexes or single family lots there are. So you'll have an overall plan that is approved. And that's what they're supposed to adhere to. But if the developer at any time possibly wants to change one of those units to a single family, we would have to come back in front of the board, revise the overall concept plan and get a new set of approvals to approve something like that. It's not like we can just change it on a whim. It's something that has to still go in front of the board and still get reapproved. It's not, it's easy. Maybe I made it sound too easy, but that's typically what we do with our infrastructure.
Traffic study was done with White Pine knowledge.
Traffic study was done in 2019, so I'm not 100% sure.
White Pine is maybe being Clay, but it's in Cicero, big time. I'm really scared about it.
And again,
we may in fact be putting a development in that when you come out of there, you can only do a right turn because it's gonna be a 4-lane highway or a 6-lane highway or something.
and that was part of the reason why I talked to state DOT again in 2020 or whenever it's 2021 to make sure that they were, that it's because of White Pine, because of all the new development since 2019. I wanted to make sure that I didn't just say that they were good with it. And then from 2 years ago, that's why I got that email and that's why I resubmitted that to state DOT before I brought this.
According to the DOT, I was at the Clay meeting, they plan on having 4 lanes right to Route 11.
Right.
And it probably stopped right there.
Already 4 lanes past there.
You know anything else? You comfortable with this response to the fluidity?
Yeah, because at a certain point, you lose the fluidity and you become bound to what you presented.
Yeah, I
And
don't-
then you go in and out of it.
Yeah.
More comfortable with
Steve, isn't the Cicero Commons a PUD?
Cicero Commons is a PUD.
Yeah, and so every time we're doing those apartment complexes there, we're essentially
it.
approving a section of the PUD based on an overall plan,
There's some
right?
underlying uses, I think, that are approved with the original PUD.
Yeah.
You're coming back in for site plan for each phase or section. Or change to it, and we added to the ordinance a couple years back for modifications to the PUD also, so.
Yeah, that one may have been set up a little differently in that it allowed, I think there was an overall blanket approval. And
That
then,
one was different.
yeah,
In fact, everything
the-
even had to come back in,
yeah.
really get the PUD modified.
right,
You wouldn't want to do that this time, you want general uses of rule. Concept plan, layout plan, and then eventually see the applicant again when they do each phase, if they're talking different between single family or duplex.
So the final plan initially will show the layout, duplexes, single
Right,
family.
if PUD approved, I mean, he's gonna have to do zoning application, subdivision application would be associated, really site plan application, which controls what's going on.
Correct, we're gonna have to get way more, again, this initial meeting is to kind of generally get the board's concerns and general concept of the overall. This is going to change while we go through the old, why is it, Neil, you broke it. This is gonna change a little bit here and there while we go through this process, while the board dictates certain aspects of the actual plan. And eventually, we're gonna have a plan that's set in stone, that everyone has agreed upon, that they won't have this problem. You know, I mean, I'll just bill you. But, again, a lot of that's gonna take a lot more time, and cost a lot more money to get into.
Hey, guys, here's Neil.
We didn't wanna go, typically with the PUD, don't go into those type of details for the first initial meeting. This is just get the board's opinions, get the board's concerns, and kind of basically get a just feel for everybody, if we're gonna put in an official application for it. This is not an official application, nothing's officially been submitted to the town. This is the initial discussion.
Yeah, and obviously traffic is a concern. You're gonna expect that this is GC right now, and goes to something of this use, the traffic count, I guess, will go down. Potentially lower than a GC type of development. And it's got some potential. You know anything else?
Nope.
Mark,
no,
you're all set? Got everything from what you need?
I think so, I hopefully, I'll see you and try to come back. Thank you very much.
I'm going.
Back to the-
I'm not going anywhere just yet.
Okay, so you wanna go back to the Farley subdivision?
Please.
Okay, so you're gonna have a standard seeker motion.
I don't.
Propose our standard secret in this form of a motion.
Second. Mr. Rosino.
Yes.
Mr. Eddie. Yes. Mr. Snyder. Yes. Mr. Bloss.
Yes.
And I vote yes.
So now we're gonna move for adoption of a resolution approving the application known as minor subdivision preliminary and final plan, Thomas Farley, Bull Street, tax map number 067-01-8.1, 2 lots, Farley and Sear. This approval is strictly conditioned on the following: 1, the applicant has agreed to present an easement regarding the shared access to the subdivided parcels as depicted on the plan to the planning board attorney and code enforcement office for review and approval prior to receiving a building permit of any kind. Once approved by the planning board attorney and codes office, the applicant shall file the easement with the Onondaga County Clerk. This requirement shall not prevent the chairman from signing the final map when presented, but no building permits of any kind shall be issued in regard to this project until the approved easement has been filed. 2, park fees are assessed at $500 per lot for a total of $1,000. 3, the applicant is hereby advised that pursuant to section 185(6) subdivision F of the code, the applicant has 90 days from approval to file the map. If the applicant misses the 90-day filing deadline, this approval will have expired. And lastly, the applicant is further notified that the chairman of the planning board may delay signing of the final plan until the chairman verifies that the applicant has executed any and all necessary agreements with the town and all securities or undertakings are in place.
Like a motion to make a-
I'll second. Mr. Rossino.
Yes.
Mr. Abbott. Yes. Mr. Snyder.
Yes.
Lost.
Yes.
And I vote yes. Thank you very much.
The drawing you're gonna present though will only show driveway to where it starts to curve, just to get in.
I'm gonna take the easement and the houses and
Coming out right off.
Okay.
Right, that's that, you're gonna submit one for signing that's got those off. Okay, that's what I was gonna recommend.
And on to the last item on the agenda, Virgin Grove, on Virgin Road, proposed to meeting. Hello, how are you?
Joe Scrippa, 6248 Edison, Cicero. I'm here with Christian Freeman from Freeman. And Joe Brino from the Architects. We're proposing, and I also should like to know, I'm obviously a Cicero resident. I have a real estate office at 5771 Miller Road, the old Virgin Bake Shop. I've grown very fond of that location, Brewerton. I never really thought much about Brewerton until 5 years ago when I moved my office. Small office, we sell a couple hundred homes a year. Saw this opportunity for this piece of land and really had a plan to do something commercial with it, more along the line of storage type buildings, not storage of warehouse type buildings. And as we looked at it, we said it really seems to suit the community a little bit better for housing. We put together a plan for 13 homes. Plan will begin a little under $300,000. Christian, pick it up from there.
Sure. Also, the project entitled Virgin Grove is located adjacent to the old Bear Creek Restaurant, 9461 Virgin Road. And we're coming before you with the approval from the town board. We just were granted approval from the town board, favorable review, so I'm coming forward to you preliminarily to get your opinion on where we stand. We understand that our next steps in the event of your approval would be a medium site plan, a subdivision application and a zone change. I'll get into the zone change now. Printed off this big old map here, so you guys can't see it. And this sort of tealish aqua represents residential. Here's our site in green. It's currently commercial. Our argument here is look at all the residential around it. We think that due to the contextual surroundings, this would be a great location for a residential component. The front site, the old Bear Creek Restaurant, it allows for a 60-foot easement, plenty of room for a right of way for us to see down through there. Sanitary and water at the road, and the grading of the site is quite favorable as well. Which will be split into two. Split into two watersheds. We're showing these storm facilities a little big, just preliminary. But two watersheds, so this looks like it's going to work. Our goal for you guys is just to feel out and get an understanding of where we stand. So that's the zone change component. I'll move right into like that. I'm going to move into the PUD aspect. So we are requesting PUD. However, we're not just throwing darts blind. We have a goal in mind. We looked at the site and tried very, very hard to make it work with the R10 standard. I'm going to pull up steps for you to show you how close we are to reaching the R10 standard. 12 of the 13 proposed lots exceed the R10 minimum of 9,800 square feet lot size. And at the front, there's a minimum lot width of 70 foot. We don't reach that because we have a curve around the cul-de-sac. However, 13 of the 13 lots are wider at the rear of the site. Only one lot is smaller than that R10 standard, and every other side yard, lot coverage, etc., we're on the money. So we're not, this PUD isn't really known, this PUD respects the code and speaks to it in a way that we think is beneficial and comes from somewhere. And that's set up on the top system.
Sure. Hi, it's Joe Prado, 6219 Woodardton Path. I live here. The houses obviously are going to be a little narrow, trying to kind of maximize how many houses you can get
in the site, while respecting what, you know, the R10, and really trying to force that R10 zoning. So we have two options, and all, many of the narrower lots, we're going with a much narrower building. Backwards. Option A, okay, here. Option A, mainly it's the front, which is most of the building, has a two-car garage, kitchen, living area, 2 bedrooms, you know, a master suite, and most of the people that we're gonna be looking at, there's gonna be a lot of empty nest. You know, this is gonna be people moving from a much bigger house down to a house where maybe they just have a couple that has a master bedroom, and then they need a guest bedroom or an office, or, you know, when someone comes to visit them, so, you know, guest bedroom. So, and they have a full bath, so you got 2 full baths, mudroom, laundry, and we're gonna have full basements on these. A lot of the patio homes don't have basements, so we thought that most homes up in Cicero in our areas have basements. And one of the things that we need is storage, because everybody comes to a bigger house, they're coming down, they're downsizing, and need storage. This option will also have an upstairs option. The basements will be a full basement, but we are also, if we're gonna have an egress window going out of those, make sure that they're safe. The upstairs will have an attic space, not on all of the units, but on certain units, it's gonna be an option, so that you could have an attic bedroom or an attic office, and that will also, thank you, that will also have a dormer so you can get some light. And then also give some interest with the elevations. We have some shed dormers on the side. On this side would be at the stair, and on this side would be for the upstairs. The other option is an option B, which is for the wider unit. Narrow easel and a big board. So this unit here, option B, is a little bit wider, and we're taking advantage of anywhere we can get that width a little bit bigger. This unit will have a little bit more presence, not just a garage. So we end up with a little porch out front, and so we're trying to kind of push that. We think that it's a little bit nicer looking than your just at the garage. So we're trying to put that in. Basically, it's the same function, a little bit bigger, 2,100 square feet, a large great room, kitchen, open area, stair going down to the center. This would be an open stair, having railing. From this side, you can see a railing. You have a master bedroom suite, again, a guest bedroom or an office, a second full bath, and laundry. All of them will have a patio on the back. They still have a public patio. They're kind of designed to fit the site, but also to fit the market that we're after, which is mainly that empty nesters or a young couple that is trying to get into the market. Even though, you know, prices, as we all know, are going to the roof. Trying to keep it down as so that people can. I know Joe will sell them. Any questions on the architecture?
So no second floor on the option B?
No, not considered at this time.
So are these built to order, or you?
Two options. Option A with a couple of options on top of that. I should say, unit A with a couple of options like the upstairs attic or the finished basement, and then the other option. So we're trying to standardize that to be more competitive in the construction. You can save a lot of money, and then, you know, we'll have different finishes, a couple of different colors. on the outside, maybe this color trim, this color siding, but, they don't all look the same. You definitely want them all to have a different color siding, different color trim. But we're gonna have probably about 3 exterior options to the outside and about 3 interior options to keep those, the price points. Somebody wants to come in and totally do custom, then they can go. But that's not what we're trying.
What did you say the price point is on these houses?
Under 3 is the lower one, and then the upper one's gonna
Like
be,
$299,900?
no, I think it was 2.
0.99.
Yeah, 0.99. I think it was at 280, I think we came up with, right? The cheapest, the option A without the upstairs or any of the.
I happen to be right now in the middle of this fiasco, selling my house and the land that I have. If this were to cost $300,000 and I were to be retired like I am, where I'm going to live and pay rent, I could rent for 15 years before I pay for this $300,000 house. If you obviously put a few less houses in the development, then they all can have a 70-foot frontage, and we can meet that code. I happen to be a anti cul-de-sac guy because I know about snow plowing, where you put snow and where you don't put snow. I mean, this situation, you only have like one house around the corner that we can plow snow in the guy's front yard. You can't even put it in front of their house because you said you got less than 70 feet in a driveway. So I have a real problem with what we do. Now, if you make this all private, contractor's gonna do it, then I guess the town doesn't care. But again, I'd be requiring you to put the roads in at our standards, because you know damn well 30 years from now you're gonna turn it over to the town anyway. But I think you got a young couple for a starter house, $280,000 is not gonna happen. That's what's happening right now. Is
If I can interject, right down Orange Court Road, Pilgrim Meadows, 1,700 square feet, starting point 317. They're really selling realistically for 349 to 370, and they're almost sold out. No, it's a little bit different. Geographically, I understand your concern about plowing and all that. I think there's, I still believe there's demand. I think it's a good use. I've been up in the community. Obviously, you've been around here longer than me. However, it's a good use for the area. The people out there are needing it. We only sell a couple hundred homes a year. I'll tell you, we haven't improved on that. Those will be sold.
there any thought about putting a few less in so we have
Just
70
wouldn't work economic. My original plan, the reason why I bought the property was really, I don't have property management business. I moved my property management business here to build a. I really don't think that's the best use, as we've got together, designing those buildings. Looking at it and saying we're gonna put another eyesore in the backyards of residents, we started talking about the residential development, and any less than that just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, because the road, we were planning on building the road to extent. And to do that, it needs money. So you need that number of density to actually pay for that, expensive road.
That cul-de-sac, by the way, does meet town code.
Yeah.
The diameter, yeah. I mean,
What's the dimensions on the cul-de-sac, the big area? The circle.
You got a scale? Yeah, I didn't bring mine. It's per the code though, and the length of the cul-de-sac is set at under 500. I think we're at 450.
it's about 120. They're 150 feet in diameter.
But what I figured is coming there with a plow and wind. Hot snow in the driveway.
I live on Wooderton Path and Treeview comes right into my driveway, basically. Treeview is a cul-de-sac. And the plows basically, you know, they make a big circle of snow that's there until end of March or early April, that melts.
And then we paid all the way too. I know that.
Is that what happens?
If you talk to the
I
highway
wonder.
superintendent, he would not have a cul-de-sac.
You'd rather not do that again. Okay.
I grew up on a cul-de-sac, we love playing.
Yeah, I know. I know, people love the cul-de-sacs. They love living there. I mean, the people on Treeview.
I'm good to go.
Yeah, I have the same concerns about cul-de-sac and one, how we should. I like the idea of residential there. Have you looked at? Townhouses?
One of the other things that I wanted to make sure that you understand, we do have a fireman, emergency, or egress out into this commercial zone. That's what's planned right now. So that area, we thought that might be an issue, so we wanted to have.
You got that in writing from the owner of that property?
We have
a written easement.
We have written easement from that survey and legally stamped and filed. What we don't have is I've tried to reach out to the Virgin Fire Chief, call him, email a couple times, I've gotten a response back, but the ball, it's in motion. We're trying to make that, have that discussion with them and talk about how to make it.
Greg Neal would want to see that easement, so that would help things move along and make that available to me as a review.
What is the
paperwork that you have for the easement?
Oh, yeah, the underlying easement that you just described.
Yeah, I can send that out.
Just email it over.
Yeah, absolutely. You looked at the option of townhouse, connected townhouse?
We did, we actually thought about the townhomes, but it seems like the market that we're looking at really like to have their own house and their own yard, their own garden. They just don't want the 3,000 square foot house anymore, but they do want to have a 2-car garage. So I've designed townhomes where, and to try to put a car garage here, a 2-car garage here, it just ends up being, like a storage area, just garage, and always fighting to not have that. But when you have 2 townhomes with 2-car garages, you have 4 garages in that front, that's all you see. So we're trying to avoid that. What's that? Oh, I'm sorry. But no, we are. Wrong thing to say.
Moving along.
But then you get a bungalow one too.
Yeah.
You're trying to work on option B.
Yes, exactly.
Mr. Rizzo, anything? No, they covered it. Mr. Bergoglio? Nothing. Right?
Nope. Nothing at this time.
I like the residential there. Want to get some more information, how it's concerned about, start cul-de-sac and snow removal.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
That concludes the agenda item. Is there any discussion, anybody have any topics or questions they want to go over? Mark, you good?
Yes.
Motion to adjourn? Thank you very much.